There are natural consequences to basing the world's money system on the creation of debt. First, it raises the cost of goods and services, which curtails the buying power of men and nations. This leads to a surplus of those same goods and services, which precipitates cutthroat competition, leading in turn to inflation. If left to manage itself, this process inevitably leads to either bankruptcy or war, or both. The Illuminati may be master tinkerers, but even they can't keep this ship afloat forever. And don't forget, the whole point was to make what billions of people had earned with their hard work and sacrifice and put it into the bloated pockets of an arrogant elite who didn't earn it. It's nothing but an elaborate snatch and run, and the whole world is their 7-Eleven. What was it Yahweh wrote with his own finger? Oh yes, you shall not steal. Lest we forget what got us all started on this rant, allow me to reprise a few verses.
Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. Revelation 18:1-3.
The Illuminati and their whole "one world and it's all for me" scheme are toast. Their house of cards is scattered to the winds. Their usurious interest they charged on loans of money that didn't really exist and wasn't theirs anyway is nothing but a happy memory. As we shall see, some are pleased about this turn of events and some are not, but there's nothing anyone can do to hasten or prevent it. The fall of economic Babylon is a prophetic fait accompli. I mentioned that the 10 nations of the Antichrist's original European empire, Revelation 17:16, are said to hate the harlot, despite her assistance in elevating their boy to a position of unparalleled prominence. Now you know why. They, with every other government on earth, are up to their eyeballs in debt to them. Debts that will no longer have to be repaid if the Illuminati can somehow be neutralized. This particular gambit is not without historical precedent. The Knights Templar, founded in 1118 ostensibly to provide security for Catholic pilgrims visiting Jerusalem, had for almost 2 centuries grown obscenely rich by lending money at interest to European heads of state. In 1307, one such king, who was up to his eyeballs in debt to them, Philip IV of France, colluded with Pope Clement V to seize their wealth and turn them, 7,000 strong, though twice that many were arrested, over to the Inquisition for re-education. Voila! Problem solved. No more debt. I get the feeling that the Antichrist will do something very much like this to the international banking community that helped to put him into power. And it gets better. For him. The Antichrist is about to take over their scam like one mafia don encroaching on the territory of another. If I may indulge in a little blue sky speculation here, I would suggest that the Antichrist might, upon his ascension to the world's throne, cancel all debts, public and private. Just wipe the slate clean. Give that a speculation factor of 7. This move would ingratiate him with the masses, who are, like their nations, in hock up to their necks, while costing him nothing. It would also serve as the launch platform for Illuminati II, a new worldwide superbank controlled by the central government, that is, by the Antichrist himself. Of course, whether or not he actually does this is immaterial. It's not specifically prophesied, but it's what I would do in his shoes, an evil win-win scenario. Of course, if you don't receive the mark of the beast, your debts remain on the books. The fact of the prophesied worldwide financial meltdown, the fall of the commercial financial whore of Babylon, is what we need to be cognizant of. Whether the Antichrist will cause it or merely capitalize on it is anybody's guess. Where does all this leave the tribulation believers? After all, it was primarily for them that this information has been provided. The news of Babylon's fall isn't of much practical use to us on this side of the rapture. Or is it? John's vision continues.
And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive her plagues. For her sins have reached heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Render to her just as she rendered to you, and repay her double according to her works. In the cup which she has mixed double for her. In the measure that she glorified herself and lived luxuriously, in the same measure give her torment and sorrow. Revelation 18:4-7.
This begins with the same advice we saw in the Old Testament.
Up, Zion, escape, you who dwell with the daughter of Babylon. Zechariah 2:7.
You can't flee from Babylon if you don't realize you're living there. If the world system is the foundational basis of your life, you're in big trouble. If you share in her sins, you'll receive of her plagues. This is a plea for a pilgrim mentality among the followers of Yahweh, both before the rapture and after, especially after. It is a call for holiness, separation from the world and separation to God. The speaker here, although we aren't told, could well be Gabriel, the angel whose particular mission is the welfare of Israel, for he refers to his audience as my people. This then is one final warning to God's chosen. If you're still part of the problem, stop, repent, turn around, think differently, flee. Be an enemy to this evil, for she is certainly an enemy to you. On a more specific note, this seems to be instructions to Israel. It is with bitter irony that we note the significant involvement of individual Jews in the perpetration of Illuminati oppression. And indeed, it goes even deeper than that. Historically, Jews have been culpable in the perpetration of heinous crimes at a national level. For instance, out of 556 important functionaries in the Bolshevik state in 1918 and 19, 457 of them were Jews. Karl Marx, from whom they got their philosophy, based on Weishaupt's concepts, of course, was Jewish. For that matter, Adolf Hitler was concerned, or perhaps convinced, that he was the grandson of a woman who had been raped by the scion of a prominent Jewish and Illuminati family, a Rothschild no less, making him 1/4 Jewish. The fact that it was a presumption on his part didn't prevent him from murdering 6 million Jews in blind retribution. Remember what Moses warned of in Deuteronomy 28:53? If the Israelites refused to serve Yahweh, they would
eat the fruit of their body, the flesh of their sons and daughters, in the siege and desperate straits in which the enemy shall distress you.
This cannibalism was, sadly, literally fulfilled several times in their disastrous history. But I believe Moses' warning could go even further, that Jews would ultimately be responsible for metaphorically devouring their own race through precipitating prejudices and pogroms. Today, some researchers have noted the Jewish strongholds within the Illuminati and concluded that Zionism is the problem. References to the infamous protocols of the Elders of Zion are ubiquitous in this literature. They have mistakenly equated Yahweh's purpose in restoring Israel with the Illuminati's satanic agenda of enslaving the world through avarice. How wrong you can be. Because they're the power behind 1,000 thrones, the Illuminati bankers and industrialists are confident that they can't, at this late date, be shaken from their positions of power, but their security is an illusion.
For she says in her heart, I sit as queen, and I am no widow, and will not see sorrow. Therefore her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the God who judges her. Revelation 18:7-8.
Not since the days of Adam Weishaupt have the members of this nefarious organization been personally vulnerable. Sure, they've suffered setbacks and roadblocks to their agenda over the years, but they weren't subjected to punishment for their crimes, primarily because they owned governments the way Jim Henson owned Kermit the Frog. The industrialized nations were their puppets, and the developing nations were the dirt under their feet. They're seemingly untouchable. But Yahweh, as we have seen, delights in doing the impossible, even when it comes to judgment. The world's economic meltdown won't occur gradually over a period of years or months. It will happen in one day, in 1 hour, as suddenly and as unexpectedly as the September 11th Islamic attack on the World Trade Center. Bringing down the financial infrastructure of the earth, however, will take more than flying a couple of airliners into tall buildings. The task will be more like trying to destroy the Internet, something that was designed to be so pervasive and decentralized that 1,000 individual attacks wouldn't even dent it. Complicating the problem is that the Illuminati is, as far as the world can see, leaderless. Not since the days of Albert Pike has anyone been able to point to a single individual and say, that's the head of the Illuminati. This fact has led some to conclude that it doesn't really exist anymore, that all that's left is the babblings of conspiracy theorists and paranoid kooks. I submit to you, however, that this manifestation of Babylon is now being personally supervised by the same person who's been running the religious side of the Whore's enterprises for the last 6,000 years, Satan himself. The fall of Babylon could happen as a result of the general mayhem of World War III, but I doubt that it will. I believe, rather, give us a speculation factor of 3, that it will emerge shaken but intact from that conflict. After all, the Illuminati predicted, promoted, and probably planned this war, just as they did the previous 2 worldwide conflagrations and countless smaller wars, financing and equipping the military machines of every major contestant. They most certainly planned for it. They will crawl from their hiding places amid the rubble of Western Europe and North America, or with foresight, Paraguay, Madagascar, or some similarly out-of-the-way place, rub their hands together and prepare to make another killing, buying up what's left of the civilized world for pennies on the dollar. Business as usual. This time, however, Yahweh is not going to let them get away with it. Through one mechanism or another, the entire structure of commercial Babylon is prophesied to fall apart, suddenly and irretrievably. Even if the Illuminati octopus still holds financial power by the time of the abomination of desolation, the European leader, now the de facto Führer-elect of the whole world, has ideas of his own, and his plans don't include towing their line or paying loan interest to them. He's thinking big, thinking outside the box, and that's a problem because they own the box, or at least they did. They designed and built it to contain guys like this. Who does he think he is? Remember, Illuminati strategy from the beginning has been to control, finance, and manipulate both sides of every conflict. Ironically, now that only their side is left standing, they will find themselves betrayed. Welcome to the grim reality of Satan worship, guys. One more random thought before we move on. The Antichrist, as we have seen, will be assassinated, only to be reanimated, on the eve of his ascension to the throne of the United States of Earth. I have hypothesized that his murderer is a Jewish priest trying to do Yahweh a service, but he could just as easily be an agent of the Illuminati. Establishing means, motive, and opportunity would be a no-brainer. Impossible? I give you the parallel precedent of John F. Kennedy's assassination and rest my case.